we're not encouraged to forgive one another. Even when it occurs, and it does occur, it won't make USA Today. It won't make the local newspapers of Los Angeles, New York, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, etc., because that's not considered important. What white folks, when they get forgiven or the concept is put out there, it needs to be nailed into our psyche so we can continue to be relatively passive in the midst of destructive attacks on us that lead to our murder.
We see are a lot of so-called successful, wealthy Black people who end up dying just like poor Black people from heart attacks, from diabetes, and
repeat
from
that.
drug abuse.
Successful, wealthy,
so-called successful.
Well,
yeah. So I say so-called successful because success is holistic.
Also, we got to do better really is an unfinished sentence. What we got to do better really means we got to do better by white folks. We got to do better for them. We have to make things easier for them. We have to pacify and accommodate them and not act certain ways for them. And we have to stop being white accommodationist.
Well, going back to what you said, Duke, I mean, this is a constant thing that you have to intentionally do the work. You have to constantly affirm yourself. Cultural affirmation, like you say, be conscious of the words that we're using, but also being conscious of our actions and making sure that we are cultural assets to our people as opposed to cultural liabilities. That's a huge part of combating, the white plague and how it affects our health. For one thing,
being able to take the time out of guilt to go to the doctor to see what was going on with herself, she finally started to, as she got more in touch with her body, realized her inherent value as a Black woman and as a Black human being. She said, I don't deserve to feel this way. I don't deserve to feel bad. I don't deserve to feel weak. I don't deserve to feel like I'm weak because I want to take care of myself. And, from there, she was able to transition out of her job. She was fortunate she had the means to do so. And, since we've been meeting and going forward, she was just like, now I can't even imagine what I was thinking, that I thought that was an acceptable way for me to be.
We are always in the presence of leadership. Let me be clear, Jan. It's usually misleadership. It's usually not helpful to us as Black people, but there are people in leadership positions who are influencing us. I think that what's happening with the media saying that we're impacted is providing a message to us about something else that's re-demoralizing us. Kind of some of what you said, Jan, about the media demoralizing us. And we pay attention to the media. As some of us know, we're one of the biggest audiences in front of the media in the country, disproportionately. And when a Black face comes up, even if it's a poisonous Black face, we pay attention because we want to see ourselves, and we are attracted to seeing what looks like us, even if it's not good for us. Like, for example, the Surgeon General had some anti-Black comments and some blaming comments, pathological comments that he said about Black folks. Is everybody aware of that? And so he's a so-called leader. The problem is not the lack of people who appear as leaders, but the fact that we have a media machine that would never let progressive Black people get enough of a platform to influence us in positive ways.
People being very, creative and finding ways to keep us connected. And one thing that I found, and I had no interest in this until I think maybe a couple weeks ago. It's called Pass the Mic.
Okay.
And it's this DJ, I think BET does it. And there's this DJ who I'd never seen before in my life. And he brings on people to sing along with their song, like their hit songs, right? He had Lisa on. When I saw it, he had Lisa, a couple other like, you know, old school artists. He was paying tribute to the funk era. And I watched it and I was like, oh man, this is DJ Cassidy. Thank you, Tamina Rawls.
Okay.
Oh man, it got me in a good mood, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't suffering from any type of isolation or you know what I'm saying, or any type of pandemic blues. It's I just happened to stumble upon it in my news feed and decided to check it out. And that's something that, you know, give things a chance, I would say. You know, these things, they don't just pop up for nothing. They pop up for a reason, especially when this pandemic came. Yeah, people are making money off it. Yeah, it's a way to keep the entertainers and all of them working, but it's also a way to keep you connected because you can't go to concerts, you can't go to the club, you know, you can't go to your friends' houses and have dinner parties.
And I think we should understand as a community, I'm talking about the Black people now, some of the consequences of us not having enough conversations about our diversity along the lines of gender, along the lines of sexuality, and along the lines of gender nuance. Even if you don't see the Black community as particularly homophobic, and I don't, we have not had these conversations though, and there's reasons why that we may get into in this conversation. But I want to mention to those who are listening, what happened to Ayana Dior is horrible. And what happened to other trans people is horrible. And we should do something about it. However, the implication that Billy Porter gave, which is not true, is that there's this epidemic of homosexual people and trans people getting their ass beat every day. And there's mob chasing this community. And that's not true.
I'm a 70s baby, and so I remember, like, I grew up more R&B, and so I remember when our music was about love and love making and men courting women and men wooing women. I remember that.
Especially in LGBTQ circles, because there's this attrition. Like the moment you see how we're getting tired of COVID messaging now, you got to think about 30 to 40 years of messaging specifically marketed to Black brothers, usually from the ages of 16 all the way up to, I want to say, at least 40s to their late 40s, because if you've been receiving that messaging for that long, you just be like, all right, forget it. Like, I've worked with individuals who felt that it was just going to happen anyway, which is what Holmes was it was inevitable. That's the word I was looking for. I've worked with individuals who felt that getting HIV was inevitable, which it absolutely does not have to be and is not. But when we deal with communities that are not us, quote unquote, in charge of our care, and we're not invested in our care enough in ourselves because of the things that we've talked about previously, this is what we're left with. How we react to oppression in this country. If a Black body is murdered by the cops, we immediately go into this defense and mode of protection and wanting to get things done and right. But it's not a real goal of justice according to these sciences, because the reason why is because we stop. We do not keep going until we actually get justice. We keep going until some other fad or something comes along, and then we go back into our trauma trance until another murder happens. And it's just too many individuals who we have not protected, who we have not honored in their death at the hands of racism. And we just keep seeing it over and over and over again.
We can't replace our people when they're gone. That is what's the most crucial takeaway from this stuff.
We have no problem celebrating the corpse of Black men. Our problem is when we have to live next to them, right? Yeah. So as I when I was giving this talk once, I said something like, we love to perform outrage when Black men die, but we hesitate to show any care for them when they're alive. Absolutely. And to me, this is the celebration of a dead Black man. Nobody has to deal with Mr. Floyd ever again. So I think anyone who follows my research knows that I'm very much about looking at Black men beyond the corpse, right? That we have to understand black men beyond just saying that they're killed by bullets and look at how they experience, live, and suffer in the world. And part of that suffering involves sexual violence and sexual vulnerability. So I'm very much an advocate of understanding why young black boys have the earliest sexual debut of any groups, why young black boys are sexually abused by men and women in our communities, etc. So when you look at why black men don't use masculinity but talk about manhood, when you ask, well, why are black men more spiritual? Why do they have higher forms of communality? Why do they not care about being breadwinners? How do they redefine the father role and the husband role? All that's black manhood doing that, right? Because that's us having a different value system. Yep. And what I'm pointing out to these people who demonize us is to say, look, you theorize us as if we have no personhood, no cultural resistance as being black men that allow us to create positive values in the world. You think we're just an imitation of our oppressor. So then I ask the really difficult question. Well, if you think that we're imitating white manhood, are you imitating white womanhood? Is there a stake in you calling black men rapists to be treated like a white woman? Do you want the vulnerability of a white woman as the basis of your notions of female liberation? Maybe that says something about why all these feminists are on Twitter complaining about black men don't protect them. You understand protection is patriarchy. It's paternalism, right? You see, these contradictions, right, are what I'm saying is that, oh, you want to tell black men they aspire, right? They aspire to be white men, but you don't see how those same notions of racism create the expectation that men should be your primary protectors, or that men should take care of you, or that you should get paid, right? But if you're dating a man, you should have to pay for them. These all come from the same thing. All I'm trying to say is the flaw of gender theory is it's only colonial, right? It only takes up this dependency complex without recognizing that black men have other values, systems, and actual behaviors that create a completely different notion of masculinity and manhood.
So that is one system of what they call medicine that deals with the pharmaceutical medicines. And under that system, there are certain things that won't work because those are the rules under that system. So under that system, there is no cure, there is no this, there is no that. However, there are other systems of health, other systems of care. Africa had a far different system of health than this Eurocentric way of doing things. And under that system incorporates nutrition. That system incorporates the various elements of the earth, like energy and all of these things. That system is very studies, observes how we relate to this earth. I mean, life came long before the pharmaceutical industry ever showed up. There was life on this earth. And the first life forms on this earth were not humans. And I can assure you that the first humans were not doctors. And yet the earth sustained this life.
Black people portray the highest numbers of victimization in everything. So it was no surprise when I learned that heart disease is a leading cause of death amongst Black men. In fact, an estimated 44% of us go out this way, meaning if we survive everything America has to offer us Black men, an estimated 44%, almost half, will die of a broken heart. And ain't that heartbreaking? And yet no one is writing the love song or crying about it. I was told a prevention method for heart attacks is laughter, which is funny, because being a Black man in America is nothing to die laughing about, but it is the kind of thing to laugh to keep from crying. But the joke is that we live past the life expectancy of 18, our bodies start cracking up to fall apart. And ain't that what we call medicine? When the side effect is worse than the disease, my physician tells me heart attacks occur when the heart doesn't receive enough oxygen in order to function properly. And I'm like, duh. Ain't that what happened to Trayvon? Ain't that what happened to Mr. Martin when he first saw his son's body? Ain't that what happens to us? Attacks on how we breathe, how we and dare to repeat that process again. They call us toxic and hypermasculine. Like they know nothing of the poison of hypertension in our chest. They ignore the signs. Like when we fight, how clenched fists are often warning signs for an impending heart attack. And yeah, I noticed how when black men have a heart-to-heart, one of them may stop beating, ended with a stroke perhaps, but the warning sign for that often sounds like a gunshot, followed by 2 more gunshots or heart arrhythmia. I was 16 when my heart tried to get up and leave, and I responded the same way black men have been taught to respond to anything having to do with their heartbeat, which was something like, it reminded me of Philando Castile bleeding out in the front seat of the car. He was like, no lie, the first time I had a checkup, my doctor had trouble finding my heartbeat with his stethoscope. He said it sounded like, that boy ain't got no heart. Do you know the struggle of trying to survive when your heart ain't really in it? Heart attacks feel like indigestion, like you can't stomach the death that comes for you. If the way to a man's heart is through his stomach, then I guess it's fitting that being forced to stomach all of this black trauma means my stomach and my heart is constantly in an upset. Fuck the police, my heart will be the one to put me under cardiac arrest. I know why my heart is doing this to me, but I just wanted to stop, but not stop, you know? Whatever it is, I just ask for my heart to beat it. Heartbeat poem, heartbeat police. Heart beats this narrative that black men ain't shit. I'm asking that my heart beat today, and I'm asking for it not to